Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really heavy but incredibly important. We're looking into the nature of power, of evil, and maybe surprisingly the human spirit, all through the lens of some first-hand accounts.
That's right. We're drawing from excerpts of the Gulag Archipelago, specifically focusing on the Soviet state security officers, the interrogators known as the Bluecaps.
And our goal really is to try and understand, well, who were these people? What drove them? And maybe what can we learn from this about, power and what humans are capable of, both good and bad?
Yeah, it's about how ordinary individuals can get caught up, become part of this massive machine of repression. It's a deep dive into that mechanism.
Okay, so let's start with the receiving end. How did the prisoners actually see these blue caps? What was that like?
Well, it's pretty grim, as you'd expect. The prisoners didn't really see them as fellow humans. The source uses terms like a foul rot, like the whole space around them was just putrid. Yeah. And the prisoners' own suffering, understandably, made it hard to see clearly, but the general feeling was consistent. These were low, malicious, impudent, and maybe sort of confused or muddled people.
Muddled. Interesting. So what kind of person was the system actually looking for? Do they want smart, independent thinkers?
No, quite the opposite, actually. It's striking what wasn't required. They didn't need educated people, broad thinkers, or even logical ones.
Or what they need?
Two things, basically. Carry out orders, exactly, and be completely impervious to suffering. That was it. Shut down empathy, follow instructions.
And truth.
Yeah.
Truth wasn't really part of that equation, was it? The source suggests they knew the cases were fake.
Absolutely. I mean, maybe in high-level staff meetings they pretended otherwise, but amongst themselves, or even to themselves, they couldn't seriously believe they were finding real criminals.
But they still produced the paperwork.
Relentlessly, page after page, as the source puts it, just churning out depositions designed to make sure that we rotted. The goal wasn't truth. It was condemnation. It was a bureaucratic process of destruction.
It's even starker when you see the comparison made with, believe it or not, the Gestapo. There's this story of a man, Yevgeny Divich.
Right, Divich. He experienced both. And he said the Gestapo, for all their brutality, were actually trying to find out if the accusation was true. They even let him go when it wasn't.
But the MGB?
Totally different. They just weren't interested in the truth. Once you were in their grasp, that was it. No intention of letting anyone go.
So if it wasn't about truth, what was driving them? This leads to that idea of totals, right? And their warped sense of good work.
Exactly. There was this pervasive cynicism, this progressive doctrine, they called it. One interrogator, Mironenko, apparently said it with pride, like it was perfect logic.
Yeah.
Interrogation and trial are merely judicial corroboration. They cannot alter your fate, which was previously decided.
Wow. Your fate was already sealed? The rest was just paperwork.
Pretty much. And they even had this dark little slogan, almost a joke. Just give us a person and we'll create the case.
Chilling.
And what the prisoners saw as horrific torture, the Bluecaps just called good work. It's a complete inversion of values.
And this normalization seeped into their home lives too, didn't it?
Yeah.
There's that story about Grabchenko's wife.
Oh, yeah. Nikolai Grabchenko. His wife apparently bragged to the neighbors, said something like, Kia is a very good worker. Because some prisoner wasn't confessing, they gave him to Kia. Kia talked with him for one night, and he confessed.
Bragging about it.
Yeah, not hidden shame. It was treated like professional success. So the motivation wasn't justice. It was partly, fitting in. It was most comfortable for them not to be different.
And the system incentivized it.
Hugely. High totals, meaning lots of processed and condemned prisoners that meant everything good. An easy life, supplementary pay, awards and decorations, promotions. The whole machinery thrived on it.
And low totals.
Low totals. You got kicked out. Simple career logic, just applied to human destruction.
So beneath the bureaucracy and the careerism, what was the real root? The source points to something deeper, more primal.
Yeah, it talks about greed for power and greed for gain. And interestingly, it suggests power was often even more important than money.
Like that Tolstoy character, Ivan Ilyich, who got this sort of intoxication from the authority to ruin people.
Exactly. And putting on that heavenly blue service cap, it apparently gave them a status beyond even high-ranking military officers or factory bosses. Nobody could check up on them, but they could check up on anyone.
Total impunity.
Pretty much. They operated in this bubble of unchecked power. The author uses this terrifying metaphor.
The tapeworm.
Yeah, like this flexible, unitary organism inhabiting a nation as a tapeworm inhabits a human body. And the feeling was, everything is yours now, everything is for you.
And that kind of power, It leads to horrific abuse, doesn't it? Personal abuse.
Absolutely devastating examples. There's a lieutenant colonel whose own unit's security rep, the Osobist, severely beat his wife while he was away. And when he got back, he was forced to take her back, keep quiet, or face arrest himself.
Unbelievable.
And then there's a case from 1944. A state security officer wanted to marry an army general's daughter. He threatened to arrest her father if she refused.
What happened?
She killed herself. It's just heartbreaking. The attitude was literally anything you saw was yours, any apartment, any woman, any enemy was struck from your path.
And it wasn't just these huge dramatic abuses. It was petty stuff too, right? Everyday corruption.
Oh, constantly. Little acts of theft and entitlement, like that officer, Senchenko, arresting someone and then immediately starting to use the guy's own map case and dispatch case right in front of him.
The audacity.
Or the officer who arrested the author himself apparently coveted this scarlet German army box the author had and basically manufactured a reason to confiscate it, stealing cigarettes meant for prisoners, fiddling expense reports for night work.
Just grabbing whatever they could.
Yeah. There's Fyodorov stealing a wristwatch during the Leningrad blockade, or Nikolai Kuskov. This one's almost absurd. Unscrewing a prisoner's entire doorknob while supposedly collecting worn clothes from the man's wife, probably pocketing some crystals, too.
Even the names sometimes seemed to fit, didn't they?
It's darkly ironic. Officials named Trunkstron like Drone, Skorokhvatov Quick Grabber, Grabishchenko Plunderer. Almost like fate was commenting.
And some took it to grotesque extremes.
Yeah.
That colonel during the war.
Oh, yeah. The post-war booty period. He amassed literal freight cars full of stuff, built multiple dachas, and the story about him clearing out a station restaurant just so he and his buddies could force women to dance naked for them. It's pure, absolute power corrupting, absolutely.
Given all this power, you have to wonder, were they ever held accountable? Could the system turn on them?
Surprisingly, yes, they weren't totally immune. The source says being thrown into the very prisons they filled was not such a rarity.
So the system could bite back. This idea of waves.
Yeah.
What was that about?
The waves were described as almost a force of nature, a natural catastrophe within the system. The author calls it the organ's hidden law of self-renewal, basically periodic purges, ritual sacrifices almost.
To clear out the old, bring in the new.
Exactly. And even the top dogs, the real kings of the organs, Yagoda, Yezhov, Beria, Abakumov, they all eventually ended up victims of their own machine. They laid their heads down beneath their own guillotine, as the text puts it.
Abakumov is an interesting case. He seemed to think the security organs were above everything.
Yeah, he was apparently quite arrogant, believed they shouldn't be subordinate to anything in the world. Even in prison, he showed defiance, but ultimately he was executed too.
What brought him down? Was it just the wave?
It involved betrayal from within. A man named Ryumin, who had been close to him, turned on him over the doctor's plot, that fabricated case against Kremlin doctors.
And there are even more extreme examples of self-preservation, right? Captain Sayenko.
That story is chilling. Captain Sayenko apparently arrested his own wife, whom he loved, based on a completely fabricated charge. Why? To save himself during one of these purges, these waves, and, sickeningly, to get a promotion out of it.
The level of moral collapse is just staggering. Which brings us to maybe the hardest part of all this. The author asks this really direct, uncomfortable question.
He does. He asks, where did this wolf tribe appear from among our people? Does it really stem from our own roots, our own blood? It is our own? And then he challenges everyone. Let everyone ask himself, if my life had turned out differently, might I myself not have become just such an executioner?
That really hits home. It forces you to look inward.
And the author doesn't shy away from applying it to himself. He talks about how, early on, he refused to join the NKVD school out of a gut sense of revulsion, even though it offered perks.
But later,
looking back at his time as an army officer, he had this awful realization. He realized he'd completely forgot every bit of what it had been like to be a powerless soldier. He started treating his own subordinates badly, like objects. His first thought on being arrested wasn't about justice or innocence. It was panic that the rank and file must not see me in that condition, maintaining status.
Wow. Even in prison, that officer mindset stuck.
Yeah. He tells a story about being a prisoner himself, marching alongside other prisoners. He saw a German prisoner and, still thinking like an officer, ordered him to carry his heavy suitcase, while Russian prisoners walked by empty-handed. It was ingrained.
So his conclusion about himself is pretty brutal.
Incredibly so. He says while he always thought of himself as dedicated and unselfish, looking back, he realized he had been thoroughly prepared to be an executioner. It just took the right circumstances.
It really drives home that point about the line between good and evil. It's not us versus them.
Not at all. As Solzhenitsyn puts it so powerfully, the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. It's not fixed. It shifts depending on us, on the situation, on the pressures we face. It's inside all of us.
But even in that darkness, the source mentions small moments, right? Glimmers of something else.
Yes, there are these brief, sometimes heartbreaking anecdotes, like a Leningrad pilot who faked having TB just to avoid joining the security organs, or a young agent who risked himself to warn a priest he was about to be arrested. There was a commander, Obsikov, who seemed to genuinely care for his soldiers, though significantly he did join the organs later. Typists who were moved by a prisoner's religious sermon. A guard who in sheer terror during a bombing raid instinctively hugged her prisoner. Even a prosecutor, Turkov, who admitted about his first death sentence. I was sorry for him.
But these moments,
Right?
they didn't change the overall picture, did they?
That's the hard truth. They were exceptions. Individual kindness often got swallowed by the system. Or the person changed Turkov, the prosecutor who felt sorry that first time. He later said he lost count of how many death sentences he'd handled. Empathy eroded.
Which points to something else the author identifies as crucial in enabling this scale of evil. Not just power, but ideology.
Exactly. This is maybe the most crucial insight. Think about classic villains, like Shakespeare's Iago or Richard III. They know they're doing evil. They revel in it.
Right.
But the author argues that 20th century evil, the kind that involves millions, requires something else. He says, to do evil, a human being must first of all believe that what he's doing is good, or else that it's a well-considered act in conformity with natural law. You need justification.
So ideology provides that justification.
Precisely. Ideology. That is what gives evildoing its long-sought justification and gives the evildoer the necessary steadfastness and determination. It transforms monstrous acts into perceived duties. It allows the perpetrator to ignore the curses and reproaches and instead receive praise and honors. It reframes reality.
It's what makes evil on that massive industrial scale possible.
Yes. And it relates to this idea of a threshold magnitude for evil. Before you cross a certain point, maybe doing small bad things, the possibility of returning remains. You can still pull back.
Yeah.
But once someone, through the sheer weight of their actions or the absolute nature of their power, suddenly crosses that threshold, the author suggests they've left humanity behind, maybe without the possibility of ever coming back. It's a terrifying idea of a point of no return in moral terms.
So bringing this all together, looking back now, what's the takeaway? The source ends by pointing out a stark contrast in how history was dealt with.
Yeah. It notes that West Germany, after the war, prosecuted something like 86,000 Nazi criminals. Russia, for the crimes of the Gulag era, which were comparable in many ways, the number prosecuted is vastly, vastly smaller. There hasn't been the same kind of reckoning.
And the danger of not reckoning, of staying silent.
The warning is clear. In keeping silent about evil, in burying it so deep within us that no sign of it appears on the surface, we're implanting it. We're basically allowing the seeds to remain, ensuring it will rise up 1,000-fold in the future. Silence enables repetition.
So this exploration of the Bluecaps, it really holds up a mirror. To history, yes, but also uncomfortably to ourselves. Which leaves us with a final thought, really a question for you, the listener.
When evil deeds aren't punished, when they're not even condemned, the author argues we're doing more than just letting old perpetrators live out their days. We're ripping the foundations of justice from beneath new generations.
Think about it. What happens to a society when young people see that terrible actions often go unpunished on Earth, maybe even seem to always bring prosperity? What responsibility do we all have individually to make sure that cycle doesn't just continue,